This video will teach a Blender user to Studio Light a smart car. At the end of this tutorial, you will have made this image. Before completing this tutorial, make sure you've completed tutorial number 1 for the beer bottle. This video builds on the knowledge learned in that tutorial. Open the demo scene provided by Lightmap. Start viewport rendering with cycles. Now start HDR Light Studio. Your interface should look something like this. Press the play button on the render view to load the Blender scene into HDR Light Studio and press Import. Let's reduce the brightness of the gradient background light so we can still see the car, but so it's quite dark. I'll enter a value of 5. Let's add a softbox light over the top of the car as our primary light source. Change the filter drop down to softbox in the presets panel. Drag and drop the third preset softbox light, medium softbox diffused, onto the middle of the windscreen in the render view. When you move a 3D map light around the HDRI map, by default it is oriented to align with the surface of the environment. But in this case we want the light to appear horizontal over the top of the car and not tilted, wherever it's positioned. To get this effect we need to enable advanced rotations for the light in the Light Properties panel. We then have additional settings to orient the light. Select rotation mode fixed. Now wherever the light is moved on the HDRI map, it will always appear to be horizontal and aligned with the X and Y axis. You can see the light in the windscreen now gives the impression it is horizontal over the top of the car. You can move the light around the canvas to see this. As the light is placed near the horizon, it becomes really thin because you are looking down the side of the light. Let's make the light bigger using the proportional scale control. Click, hold and drag to scale the light. The light looks pretty good at around 50 by 50 size. I like how the light is reflecting on the wheel arch detail here. But the light needs a small adjustment because the front edge is not positioned correctly. You can make small adjustments to the location of the light by moving its handle in the light preview. The handle is the orange dot at the centre of the preview. Drag the handle and the light moves relative to this handle. The handle could be moved all the way to the edge of the light. Try dragging the light handle to position the light better. Here you can see the handle has been moved to the left of the light preview and the issue is now resolved. There's a nice clean edge in the front of the car. This light looks pretty flat in the reflection and we need to make the reflection look more interesting. The appearance of a light is controlled by the content section of the light properties. The master content is all you need for most lights, but to take more control you can also use the value blend or alpha multiply settings. In this case we're going to take more control over the brightness using the value blend settings. Enable value blend with the checkbox. You can see the appearance of the light in the light preview panel. This will show the result of any changes you're making to its appearance. We're going to use a radial gradient to control the brightness of this light and create a hotspot. This will give the light more character when seen in reflections in the car. Change the blend mode to multiply so that the gradient values of the value blend will multiply with the values of the softbox texture. Change the content type to gradient and the type to radial. Change the first peg on the value ramp to 1 and the last one to around 0.1. Change the origin X and Y to 0.5 and 0.5 to centre the radial gradient. change the extent slider until the corner of the softbox goes darker. Now press the graph button on the value ramp to edit the gradient further. Change the mode to Bezier and then double click to add 2 more pegs and adjust them to make a curve that looks like this. Then press OK to close the panel. Now let's increase the brightness of this value blend content to control how much it's boosting the brightness of the softbox texture. A value of around 450 looks good. You can check the effects of the value blend by turning it on and off using the active checkbox, so you can see a before and after. You can click, hold and drag on the exposure button in the light preview panel to explore the brightness of this light and better understand its brightness values. You can see we have made a nice hotspot. We can move this hotspot around by moving the origin X and Y sliders. Move it around and see if it creates a better effect in the car. Here we move the origin X to about 0.38. In the preset filter, let's select Spotlight. Drag and drop one of the spot blur lights onto the middle of the headlight on the right of the car. It's created some nice highlights on the model. Increase the brightness by a few f-stops using the plus button until it brings the paint alive. A value of 800 looks good. I'll just tweak the position to get it perfect. Next we need some light on the front left bumper area. Select Synthetic filter on the presets and choose Torch Light, which provides a light that looks like an indirect light coming from a spotlight. Drag and drop this onto the front left bumper area. Let's scale that light to be larger, 35 by 35, and increase the brightness by 1 stop using the plus button to 200. I'll just tweak the position to get it perfect. Now let's drag and drop Torchlight half onto the right panel of the car. Let's increase its size to 30 by 30. That is producing a nice effect now in the side of the car. If we go to the Alpha Multiply tab for the torchlight, you can see it has a ramp that is creating a soft cut in half for the light. Adjust this ramp until you like the appearance of the panel of the car. We'll increase the brightness up to 150 also. When looking at the car now, we can observe that the front grille is looking pretty dim. Let's zoom into that area on the render view using the zoom and pan to get the area we want. Once this is done, select the light paint tool again in the view. Let's drag and drop Kino 1 light onto the grille. Adjusting the position with light paint, you can find a sweet spot where the light creates a really lovely highlight. We will boost the brightness to 400. That detail looks great. The right A pillar would benefit from a highlight to accentuate its shape. Let's duplicate the earlier placed spot blur light and place this light on that pillar. Select and duplicate the lights with Ctrl and D. Pan the render view to show the pillar. Choose the light paint tool and click to position the light. We can see that the light is too big for this small detail, so let's scale it down to around 10 by 10. Let's solo the light to make sure it's not creating any unwanted reflections elsewhere on the model. we can see all the other highlights it creates look really good. Unsolo the light and let's take a look at the current state of the lighting. The wheels on the car are looking really dull. Let's fix that now. Let's pan the render view to the front wheel. Drag and drop Half-Light 1 onto the wheel. Solo the light and let's see if we can make the wheel really pop. You can see the light is reflecting in the whole side of the car in the Blender render. Let's make the light brighter anyway to make the wheel come alive. A brightness of 800 is good. Now it's time to learn about area lights. So now we want the light to affect just the wheel. To create a more local lighting effect, we need to enable the area light setting on the light. This will build a 3D area light in Blender mapped with our HDR light appearance. We can then bring this light close to the wheel, so it's reflecting and lighting only the wheel and not the whole side of the car. The HDR Light Studio add-on can create two types of area lights in Blender, and you can choose which is right for you and your project. Put simply, if you make mesh emitters, they can be seen by the camera. If you make Blender area lights, they cannot. For this project, we do not need to see the lights directly, only their reflection and illumination effect. So I will choose Blender area lights as the type on the HDR Light Studio panel. You can switch this at any time and the lights will be rebuilt in the format you choose. Enable the area light setting on the Light Properties panel. Once we enable the area light setting, we can't see much difference, but a lot of things have happened in the background with this single setting. The light has been removed from the HDRI map that is shared with Blender, and an area light has been created mapped with the HDR image. The light is far away from the car to start with and is aligned with where the light was on the HDRI map, so the shot actually looks much the same. The canvas in HDR Light Studio still shows the light, however it's not actually on the HDRI map. It's here for visual reference, showing you the light is still there. The light is shown in the light list with yellow text and is labelled as an area light. The primary control for the distance of the light is the Smart Dolly slider. At the moment the light is huge but very far away. As we bring the light closer, if we kept the light the same size, it would be huge and way too bright for our model, as it would appear so much larger in reflections and create way too much illumination. So we scale down the light smaller as it gets closer to keep the same illumination contribution. This all happens automatically when using the slider. Let's reduce the Smart Dolly value to bring the light closer to the wheel. But we have a problem. The slider values mean a very small value like 1 still puts the lights too far away from the wheel. We don't have the right scale of distance control needed for this size model in Blender. There is a solution. If we open Preferences, there is a scale setting we can adjust. Change the Smart Dolly scalar value from 1 to 0.01 and press OK. Now with the slider at 1000 the light is far away, but at lower values between 50 and 0 we have a nice amount of control over the light near the wheel. The light is facing the light paint position where the light was dropped. If you want to make adjustments to the position, you can use the latitude and longitude sliders to orbit the light, just like moving the light around the HDRI map. Once you are happy with the light position, let's unsolo it. We can see the car looks great with the wheel having some light on it now. We can turn off the light and check what it looked like before. This will hide the area light in Blender too. Area lights are totally integrated into how HDR Light Studio works. Everything you do in HDR Light Studio is automatically kept in sync in Blender. Turn the area light back on. It makes a big difference. Let's duplicate this area light. Pan in the render view to the rear wheel. Enable the light paint tool and click on the rear wheel. Make some adjustments to the position, scale and brightness until you feel the area light is creating a good effect. Now it's a case of looking at the render and deciding what areas need improving or bringing to life with lighting. I love the highlights on the front right details and feel we could bring some of that effect to the front left also. So let's try it. We're going to duplicate the light, creating highlights on the front right. If you can't remember which light is creating that effect, solo the lights in the light list until you find it. It was the first spot blur light we placed. Duplicate the light, either by right clicking and selecting duplicate or press Ctrl and D. Pan the render view to show the front left bumper area and choose the light paint tool. Click or drag on the 3D model to discover a position that creates some nice highlights on that front bumper area. Remember, you can make small adjustments to the position on the canvas too if that's easier. We need to reduce the size of this light as the highlight is too large. Make it 20 by 20. This looks good. The dark background is looking pretty dull. Let's put a gradient behind the car to create a better backdrop. Make a gradient light from the toolbar and place it behind the car using Light Paint Rim mode. Adjust the value ramp on the master content to create a pleasing background effect. Turn on Alpha Multiply on this light and the default box gradient will soften all edges of the light so it doesn't create hard edges in reflections. Increase the size of the light so it fills the background of the shot. 30 by 30 is good. Now that the background is brighter, the car now looks too dark relative to this. The whole lighting design needs to be brighter. Instead of adjusting each light individually to be brighter, there is a very simple way to make all the lights on the HDR map brighter. This will not affect the area lights, but the wheels are bright enough anyway. Make a flat background light and drag it down the list under the gradient light that's behind the car. Change this flat background light blend mode to multiply. Now this single light is multiplying the brightness of the whole HDR lighting design. Increase the brightness of this light until the car lighting balances with the background. A value of 200 looks good, as it has doubled the brightness of the lights on the HDR map beneath. That's it, the lighting is finished. Feel free to make some minor tweaks till you think it improves the lighting, and then we're ready to render the final HDRI. Press the HDR button and produce the final lighting at a resolution of 3000 by 1500 with area light texture at 1000 pixels. Then a HDR map and 2 HDR textures will be created to go on those area lights. You can now close HDR Light Studio and render your final image in Blender. The final lighting on the car looks really good, but the floor shadow is pretty weak. So as an optional extra to make the shot look even better, a good floor shadow can make a big difference to the effectiveness of this image. It really grounds the car, fixing it to the floor. So to do this, we're going to need 3 separate images and then we're going to combine them. So first we'll get the car totally on its own with no floor shadow, and we'll make the background transparent, and that's one image that we'll need. We'll save this as car PNG with an alpha channel. The next image layer we need is just the background on its own, so we'll actually totally hide the car, hide the floor, and just render the visible HDRI that's in the background, and we'll save that as background PNG. For the next image layer, we're going to start HDR Light Studio, hide all the other lights, and create one bright light that lets us create a really strong floor shadow. We'll go back into Blender and turn off the shadow catcher, turn on the solid floor, and then it allows us to create this really strong shadow. Next thing we'll do is hide the car from the render, and then we can just create a pass which contains only the floor shadow, and then we'll save that as shadow PNG. So now we've got these 3 image layers in Photoshop, and you've got the base, which is the background, then the shadow, then the car. And we take the shadow and we change the blend mode to multiply, and then we play with the levels until we just bring it so we've just then got that floor shadow and the grey area disappears. And then that grounds the car really nicely, and then we can save this as a Photoshop file and as a PNG file, or whatever photo editing software you use. This is how we composite it, or you can even do it directly in Blender. So there you have it, that's the final result, lit with HDR Light Studio.